Take stock. I'm Tim Stenevec.
I'm Katie Greifeld.
Well, let's take a look at where AMC is trading right now. Approaching, well, once again, all-time highs, higher by more than 25% just in the last 2 days, and today alone, higher by more than 8.7%. Joining us now is Trey Collins. He's otherwise known as Treys Trades. He's made quite the name for himself within the meme stock community and even with AMC CEO Aron, whom he interviewed for nearly an hour earlier this month in the midst of all of the volatility. Trey's got almost 350,000 YouTube subscribers, and on Twitter, which he joined in only January of this year, he's got more than 180,000 followers. Hey, Trey, great to have you on the show. Really appreciate you taking the time. As I mentioned, AMC nearing an all-time high. What is your bull case for AMC?
Hey, well, first off, I'd like to thank you guys for having me on. It's an absolute honor to be able to speak on the bull case for AMC. So as we all know, what's happening right now in the stock market, specifically with AMC stock, is nothing to do with fundamentals. It has to do with the systemic issue that's been exposed by essentially the retail investor, the apes, as we call them. And that issue is a lot of different facets that have bred essentially what's happening right now over the last 6 months, whether it be the failure to deliver system that's coming from the call options chain, call options run out the money to in the money, whether it be naked short selling, whether it be collateral issues, whether it be heavy leveraging coming from big banks to these hedge funds that are shorting the stock. Essentially what happened is the apes out here, the retail investor, noticed that AMC stock and many others were really being heavily shorted, despite the fact that every single month the fundamentals continue to improve. So what's happened here is you've got a momentum play, a short squeeze effect coupled with a gamma squeeze effect, because there's so many call options that could potentially run in the money this week. And that's what you've got. You've got the short squeeze that's on the table. You've got a gamma squeeze that's on the table, which is essentially just this idea of these call options running in the money, getting hedged for by market makers. And then a lot of people who are just trying to play the momentum, the swing trade of this entire setup.
So Trey, let's talk about that a little bit. I think everyone knows what a short squeeze is by now, but what is a gamma squeeze? What's going on here when you look at the options market and the bets that are being placed there?
Absolutely, great question. So what you're seeing here with a gamma squeeze is AMC's options chain is very abnormal. And it's abnormal in the sense that you don't typically get that much call option or put option activity. In fact, I remember Aron stating publicly that about 11% of the total options market was in AMC a couple weeks back when I interviewed him. Now, this poses some really huge gamma effects, because what happens is market makers write up contracts, and it's a way to leverage not a lot of money to make a lot of gains. Now, if you have a call option that's out the money, right? Let's say the strike price is $65, it's currently trading at $60, and it starts to run in the money. These market makers have to hedge for the opportunity that some investors might end up exercising those calls. And where do they purchase the stock, the underlying stock for those options? It's from the market, right? It comes from the retail investor, the institutional investor, whoever's holding long stock. They have to purchase something off of the market. And that drives this feedback loop of gamma squeezing. Now, this week is incredibly exciting because there's a huge amount of call options that could potentially run in the money and cause that exact same gamma squeeze effect from the hedging that takes place by these market makers. I'm honestly really excited and not surprised in the least bit to see the way that it's been performing this week.
Well, I can tell that you're excited. Trey, I'm curious about Aron, because you mentioned him, and I think a lot of people heard about you for the first time. This is the CEO of AMC. When you interviewed him for close to an hour on your YouTube channel, there's some images of it right now. Why do you think a CEO like Aron, who's been the CEO of several publicly traded companies over the last 30 years, is so open to talking to you?
You know, I asked myself that question initially too, but the way that it all happened was pretty fascinating. So I actually tweeted out to Aron on Twitter, and I said, hey, there's a huge group of retail investors out there, the apes, who would love to hear some feedback on the company. And about a week and a half later, he ended up shooting me a tweet back, and he said, hey, I'd love to chat with you. We ended up having a phone call, and he found me because his son actually watched my YouTube channel, which was a pretty cool little thing. But I think what ended up happening is he watched kind of the due diligence, the research, the number crunching, the fundamental thesis that I've been, essentially just diving into over the last 6 months with AMC. And I think that he just saw an opportunity to connect in a way that CEOs have never done before. What I try to do with my YouTube channel is not influence anything that anybody does. I try to lay facts and information, right? We don't want to disprove fact through speculation. I just want to lay the facts out there. And I think that Aron saw that opportunity to use that platform to speak with a wide variety of people, answer questions and concerns, that a lot of people have. And to be frank, he spends a lot of time on Twitter, Reddit, just reading through and combing through all the questions and concerns that the retail investor of his company has. And it's a unique scenario because over 80% of AMC is retail investors. So you really do have to feed into what the little guy essentially wants to see out of the company. And he just wanted to bridge that gap. Honestly, he's setting the bar. It's an incredible thing to see.
So Trey, I mean, you said it yourself that the stock is a bit disconnected from fundamentals now, to put it mildly. And even though the outlook for AMC is improving, people are going back to theaters. I mean, the stock is up. I mean, the gains are approaching 3,000%. Are you at all worried that, these gains could evaporate and the shares could come down just as quickly as they went up, and what that means for all the retail traders that are now in the stock?
So, great question. The important thing to drive home, especially with AMC stock, is we're not here. If you're invested in AMC, you're not here for the fundamentals. You're here because it is a momentum trade. Now, with momentum trading, obviously comes risk. And that's something that, I make sure to talk about a huge amount on the channel, as you really do not want to trade a stock with more capital that makes you feel uncomfortable or comfortable. So with that sort of scenario, there's obviously risks on the table, especially with the derivatives market. But I really do think there's more on the table because fundamentally speaking, just looking at pure numbers, right? There's about 12.5% short interest still sitting on the stock. And there's still a huge amount of call options that are currently out the money. So essentially what this means is if this continues to sit where it is right now and short positions continue to accrue losses, it costs the money simply to hold if it trades sideways, but it costs the retail investor nothing. So I really do think there's more on the table. Of course, there's risk. There's nothing guaranteed about the stock market, but I think there's more risk to short sellers than there is to people who are playing a long position here.
Hey, Trey, what's the next stock, the next target for the apes? What are you watching?
To be honest with you, I think I'm going to cross that bridge when we get to it. But I want to just continue to preach about a systemic change in the stock market. So whatever that ends up being down the road, I want to see a better stock market for myself, for my future children, for the future apes out there who want to invest in the market. I think just systemically, the way that everything is built is geared towards the people who are already well off. And I'd really love to see the retail investor come away with the win here, because to be frank, there's a lot of people on financial media who are betting against the retail investor. And I really am excited to see how this storybook plays out and rolls into the next stock. But I think it's going to be one where the little guy gets the win. And I'm very excited for it.
Well, to that point, Trey, and what you say about the way that you think that retail investors are portrayed by the media, what do you think it's going to take for retail investors, for people like this apes army, to be taken seriously?
I think money talks. I think money talks volumes. And there's a lot of people out there, retail investors, who have made a lot of money. I've been messaged by hundreds of people who become millionaires off of AMC,
hundreds,
GameStop, XYZ shorted stocks. And money talks the exact same way for these big firms, hedge funds, and suits. If they're in the hurt box and they're really hurting, that is going to speak volumes to them. It makes people wake up. No good change in the world ever comes without friction. And that's the friction that I'm talking about, is money. It speaks. So I think as the retail trader continues to make money, and you see the shift, there used to be bulls, there's bears, now you've got apes. The apes out here are showing that there is a new wave of trading that is coming to the stock market. And AMC is a culmination of that exact thing.
So Trey, I want to ask about you, because your following has just exploded in recent months. And it kind of reminds me of what we saw with Keith Gill, better known as Roaring Kitty. And Roaring Kitty, I mean, he was hauled in front of Congress. Are you at all worried that, regulators might contact you, or what the future might look like there?
I think I've done a pretty decent job of covering, essentially what I recognize as not being a financial advisor, right? I present information. I in no way, shape, or form am ever here to tell somebody to buy, when to sell. In fact, if you watch any of my videos, I just put one out this morning, especially, I say it is your financial responsibility to make your own decisions, right? I'm not here to do that for you. What I can do is lay out information, right? I can say, look, there's this going on with the fundamentals. There's this going on with the box office sales. You've got this for short interest. You've got this for failure to delivers. You've got this for, repo and reverse repo markets, whatever it might be, right? I can do that for you. But I'll tell you this. If they bring me in front of Congress to speak on what's going on here with the apes, I will gladly defend them, and I will gladly show up, because I stand for exactly what this entire movement stands for. There's no leaders in this. There are only apes and people who like the stock, and that's as simple as it gets.
No leader.
Access the financial world on demand. Hear from leading economists, policymakers, and industry experts via live and on-demand webinars, only from Bloomberg. Start exploring to see what's moving the markets. Visit Bloomberg.com/webinars.
Our generation's biggest problem.
Climate change is happening.
And the world's most innovative solutions.
Transport, industry, buildings, electricity, all of those things.
Everything you need to know about our changing environment, the politics of global warming.
We can and we will deal with climate change.
In the fight against climate change, Bloomberg Green has you covered.
Welcome back to Quick Take Stock. I'm Tim Stenovec.
And I'm Katie Greifeld. We're here with Trey Collins, aka Treys. He's still with us. And we wanted to ask him some questions you submitted to our Twitter account. But before we get going, Trey, I want to ask you about you because you're a 23-year-old active duty officer. You also have almost 350,000 YouTube followers. I mean, how did you even get started with the YouTube channel and building this amazing following?
You know, it's a pretty funny story. My life dream was actually to qualify for Olympic trials in the marathon. And I ended up finding out that I've got a pretty bad heart condition. And that really threw everything kind of for a loop here. Just give me one sec. Let me get this out of the way.
We can still hear you, Trey. Don't worry. We lost your shot.
Okay,
We're going to try to get it back. We can still hear you.
What ended up happening is I had some issues pop up with my heart. And I had to, essentially sideline my goal of qualifying for Olympic trials. And I wanted to dive into something else. I'm not the kind of guy that can just sit still and not do anything. So what I ended up doing was just diving into stocks. I was watching my friend, his dad was actually investing, and my brother-in-law, Patrick, he was an optometrist and was really interested in real estate. So I just kind of picked some brains, figured some stuff out, sat down for about, a month and a half, and just for 2 or 3 hours a day, I would read. I would study how to do technical analysis. I would study the fundamentals of companies. And I just took a stab at making some money, and I did okay, and just decided to do a YouTube channel to track the progress. And December 16, 2020, I began the journey, and here we are now. It was just a pretty freak thing. I think there's 4 things that contribute to success for anybody, and 2 of them you can't control, 2 you can. One of them is luck, timing, right? You can't control luck and timing. I got lucky. There was some great timing, but then grit and skill. You can control those things. And I worked hard, and I continue to perfect my craft, and that's the most that I can do as an individual person.
Well, Trey, we are so thrilled that that journey led you here because we have a great first question from @Shane and then a bunch of numbers. And he wants to know what you think about the media painting you out to be a leader of this movement.
That's a great question. I would gladly say that the exact same thing that we said before I went on commercial break here. There are no leaders. There's only apes and people who like the stock. I am simply here to pass along a singular opinion. I like the stock. I'm very bullish on it. I was bullish on it back in January when this was trading at, $5. In fact, I think I was one of the first, if not the first guy, to be talking about AMC stock before everything went crazy. There were some really hard months over, I would say February and March, where this thing was trading sideways between $5 and $10. And I, stood firm because I believed in the fundamentals of the company. But there was a lot of people who thought the exact same thing, right? So it's not just me, being a leader. That's not it in the least bit. I'm a guy that gets to have a platform, which is awesome, but I'm just a guy, right? It's just my opinion. It's what I think the stock is going to do. I'm bullish on it. I think it's going to go up. That's as simple as it is. There's a lot of people that have the same opinion. And that's all there is to it. There's just apes.
Hey, Trey, we have a question from actually one of our colleagues in the newsroom, Brian Chapeta, also known as Bloomberg opinion columnist. He asks if you're considering sharpening your investing knowledge by studying for and taking the CFA exam. You talked about spending hours a day brushing up on technical analysis. What about when it comes to CFA?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in doing that. So as it sits right now, I do work that full-time job, as we kind of discussed here, between 8 and 5. I'm actually on this interview during my lunch break. But once, that storybook eventually closes someday, what I want to do is go back to school so that I can study, tax information and really dig into the deep depths of the market so that I can, maybe someday get licensed. But my life goal at this point is to really work towards two things: a better systemic, platform for the market to operate on, and to help educate people, right? Not necessarily in a legal standing, but to pass along information that I was able to learn. I'm going to be completely blunt with you. I'm not going to claim to be the smartest guy on the planet. I'm not going to claim to be the guy that's going to make the most money on the planet. But I will claim to be the hardest working guy and the dude who's always going to step up to the plate and try and really genuinely, pass along something that's worth something. So that's my game plan. I'm not going anywhere.
So, Trey, the next question comes from @StonksBatman, love that name, and he wants to know what you think of what he calls the illegal practice of stock bashing running rampant recently.
So this is actually really interesting. I went onto Fox Business, and Charles ended up asking me a question right at the end. He said, "What do you think is the greatest threat to the apes, to the retail investor?" And I said infiltration. Now, there's really interesting stuff going on with the SEC and Gary Gensler talking about, kind of monitoring social media. And I think some people interpreted it as, watching to see what the retail investors are doing. But I don't think that's it. I think what this truly is infiltration. Big institutions, big firms, the suits that pay people to infiltrate the community. I can speak on it. I've seen it. I've seen those people on my YouTube, comments on Twitter, on Reddit. They're all over the place. Sometimes using the same name in multiple spots, using pictures of people that, this is what's really crazy, is using pictures of people who may not even be alive anymore. That is disgusting. It's absolutely atrocious. And I think that's really what's going on here. It's a terrible thing and it needs to get cracked down on. And I hope that's what the SEC and Gary Gensler are truly talking about when they talk about monitoring social media.
Trey Collins is the host of Treys Trades on YouTube. Trey, thanks so much for joining us on Quick Take Stock. Really appreciate you.
I appreciate your time.
Well, that's going to do it for Quick Take Stock today. Katie, a great show to have Trey Collins join us. Such a huge following.